almost 4 words, spoken casually into a live microphone by one of the most powerful sports owners on the planet. And those 2 words just handed the WNBA ownership group the most devastating negotiating weapon ever pointed at a players' union in the history of women's professional sports. Here is what you need to understand before anyone else explains this to you. The WNBA just triggered revenue sharing for the first time in 28 years. The players' union is celebrating, social media is flooded with victory laps, but the owners are not panicking. They are not scrambling. They are sitting across the boardroom table with a very specific piece of internal data, and they are waiting because they know exactly what generated every single dollar of this historic financial milestone. And so do you. If this kind of financial forensics is what keeps you coming back, hit that like button right now. We are about to follow the math all the way to the 2026 negotiating table, and what we find there is going to fundamentally change how you see this story. Let's go back to 2020, because that is where this entire financial trap was constructed. The WNBA and the Players Association signed a collective bargaining agreement that included a revenue-sharing trigger most analysts privately viewed as a complete phantom clause. The mechanics were explicit. Players would only receive 50% of incremental revenue if the entire league hit a specific compound growth benchmark. That target was 20% annual growth every single year from the 2019 baseline. For 5 straight years, financial analysts were blunt about the odds. The league had been a subsidized financial black hole for nearly 3 decades. The consumer demand simply did not exist. Nobody was buying jerseys. Nobody was moving merchandise. The trigger, as far as the business world was concerned, would never activate. Then, Indianapolis happened. The WNBA generated enough revenue in 2025 to trigger that benchmark for the first time in the organization's 28-year history. An $8 million pool is now being distributed across the league's 13 rosters. And simultaneously, the union announced a group licensing payout of $9.25 million, a number so disconnected from the league's previous reality that it requires a specific historical comparison to fully process. From 2016 through 2019, across 4 full seasons of professional basketball, the entire WNBA generated a grand total of $280,000 in group licensing revenue. 4 years, the whole league. $280,000. That is the baseline. That is the product as it existed without an economic catalyst. The new number, $9.25 million, represents a 3,200% increase, and the vast majority of that jump happened in a single calendar year. Now, here is where the union's narrative requires some very careful examination. The Players Association immediately framed both payouts as proof of their collective value. They marched into the spotlight and declared that this $17 million in combined distributions validated their ongoing demand for a 27.5% gross revenue share in the upcoming 2026 collective bargaining negotiations. They are telling the owners, look at what we built together. Look at what our collective labor generated. Now open the vault. Union leader Nika Ogwumike articulated the strategy directly, describing how the union pools its name, image, and likeness rights into a collective package, with the stated purpose of representing all players, not just the stars at the top. And on a surface level, that framing sounds reasonable. It sounds fair. It sounds like exactly what a union is supposed to do. But the owners are not reading the press releases. They are reading the data. And the data tells a story the union leadership has actively avoided discussing on camera. That 3,200% spike in licensing revenue was not generated because millions of fans suddenly decided to invest in the merchandise of backup power forwards or reserve point guards. That $9.25 million was generated almost entirely by one specific player's jerseys, one player's trading cards, and one player's licensed merchandise, moving at a volume the WNBA had never come close to experiencing before she arrived. The union is not just celebrating a milestone. They are trying to use Caitlin Clark's individual economic footprint as the foundation for a permanent structural restructuring of the entire league's financial architecture. And the owners have already prepared their response. Where do you stand on this? Does the union's group licensing model protect athletes who built the league through lean years? Or does it fundamentally misallocate wealth generated by one player's singular draw? Drop your unfiltered take in the comments. This debate is only getting louder as 2026 approaches. Because here is the layer of this story that very few people are discussing. The $9.25 million licensing pool is not being split exclusively among players currently active in the league. The union intends to distribute that money across more than 250 individuals. That number includes players on active 2025 rosters. It also includes players who have already retired from professional basketball. And it includes players who have been released from their contracts entirely. People who are no longer affiliated with any WNBA team are about to receive direct deposits of up to $50,000. Think about the precise mechanics of what that means. A fan in Iowa or Indiana purchases a number 22 jersey because they are passionate about watching one specific player compete. That transaction generates revenue. That revenue flows into the union's group licensing pool. And a portion of it then travels directly into the bank account of a former player who has not stepped on a professional court in years. The union calls this sharing in the growth. Financially, it is wealth generated by consumer demand for one individual, redistributed to people who created none of that demand. And if you believe that dynamic has gone unnoticed by the ownership group, Tsai's comments provide a definitive answer. Tsai is not a casual sports investor. He is the billionaire co-founder of the Alibaba Group, a man whose entire career was built on analyzing consumer behavior and identifying exactly where value is actually being created. He did not stumble into owning the New York Liberty. He made a calculated investment. And when he spoke about the WNBA's financial metrics on a hot microphone, he was not being reckless. He was being precise. His exact words, viewership, ticket sales, sponsorship, everything went up almost 4 since Caitlin Clark entered the league, a 4 times multiplier, confirmed publicly by a primary team owner using internal league data. Let that land. If you have been following this channel because we refuse to soften the numbers, consider joining as a member. Your support is what keeps us going deeper into the stories the mainstream coverage glosses right over. Here is why that 4 times number is so tactically significant heading into 2026. The union's entire bargaining position rests on the argument that the league is experiencing a period of historic collective growth that every player contributed to through years of dedication, labor, and sacrifice. The 27.5% gross revenue demand is built entirely on that premise, but Tsai just testified on record with publicly available data backing him up that the baseline product of the WNBA in 2023 still exists. It did not grow organically. The 75% spike above that baseline has a single name attached to it. The owners are more than willing to let the union distribute the licensing checks. They are happy to let the revenue-sharing trigger activate and celebrate alongside the players, because those are one-time distributions tied to existing contractual language. The real fight, the one that determines whether there is a 2026 season at all, is about whether the ownership group will permanently restructure the league's long-term financial commitments based on a multiplier they openly acknowledge belongs to one player, not the collective. And the deepest irony of this entire financial moment is not found in the boardroom. It is found in the locker rooms. The same veteran players who spent the 2024 season vocally questioning the media attention surrounding Caitlin Clark, the players who committed hard fouls to test her and demanded that the league respect the veterans who built the franchise. Those are the exact players now waiting on $50,000 licensing deposits funded entirely by the sale of her merchandise. They challenged her standing in the league publicly. They are cashing her checks privately. That contradiction is not just irony. It is the central tension driving the WNBA toward a 2026 collision. The union believes the rising tide lifts all boats. The owners have the receipts proving the tide has exactly one source. When those two positions meet at the bargaining table, the outcome is not going to look anything like the celebration currently happening on social media. The math has already been done. The only question left is who blinks first. If this breakdown gave you the context the mainstream coverage left out, subscribe and turn on notifications. We are tracking every development in the 2026 CBA standoff as it unfolds. The next video goes deeper into exactly what the union's 27.5% demand would actually cost the owners, and why the number they counter with may shock everyone in the league. Do not miss it.